Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is a Public Works podcast. My name is Joseph Blackman, and today I got a real treat from you or for you. Her name is Kenna Hubai, and she is the Business Services Manager for Charlotte County Public Works in beautiful Florida. Kenna, say what's up to everybody.
What's up, everybody? How y'all doing? Warm welcome from sunny Florida.
It's a warm welcome. How warm is it out there?
I think it's pushing the 90s.
Oh, okay. That's warm.
Yes. So
Yep.
it's a little peek into what our summer is going to look like.
Gotcha. It just started April. How can you be in the 90s?
Southwest Florida.
Yeah. Okay. So speaking of Southwest Florida, give us kind of the lay of the land. Charlotte County. When I think of Charlotte, unfortunately, I think of the Carolina Charlotte.
Right.
How many people, I guess, square mileage, if you don't know everything, that's totally fine, but just kind of give us a lay of the land what we're working with here.
Oh boy, should have brushed up on that. Charlotte County is an amazing community. It's nestled in between Sarasota County to our north and Fort Myers, Naples areas to our south. And then Tampa is about 90 miles north of us. And we're a coastal community. I think we've got about 180,000 residents. Don't quote me on that. It really is a gem of an area.
Okay. And you're the business services manager. And one thing I love about titles in public works is they're so vague. Like business services manager. Like, could we be more like coy on what a job description is? So I need Kenna to give us a 30,000-foot view of what you're on or what you're over. And then also give us a random Tuesday, a day in the life of Kenna Hubai.
Oh boy. Okay. Business services. So really it's the administrative core functions for the department. And I oversee all of the administrative staff, the grants analyst, public relations, training, and cemeteries. We have 4 county-owned cemeteries, and I have 2 field staff that do the maintenance groundskeeping out there. A random Tuesday. Let me back up. We also oversee culture change initiatives, and recently we were handed over community redevelopment agencies and or areas, depending on what community you're in. So the short of that is CRAs. Those typically are a function of economic development. However, those were given over to us and most recently me and my team to oversee. So CRAs are designated areas with blight or a brownfield, and the intent is to inject money and bring economic prosperity back to that area.
Interesting.
So I don't have a lot to share on that just yet because it's so new.
Well, let me stop you there. Where does
Yep.
your brain go when all of a sudden you show up on Monday and there's this pile on your desk and say, Kenna, this is your job now?
Well, we had it for about a year. However, it had fallen under another supervisor, but the scope was so narrow, it was manageable. Then we had a subsequent meeting with executive leadership, and it was like, hey, this thing has grown heads. What are we thinking? And I had already been kind of prepped behind the scenes, and I said, I'll just go ahead and take it. It was inevitable, but before I had come to Public Works, I was in economic development. And so I was familiar with those particular 3 and kind of vaguely familiar with what they are and how they work. So it seemed to be a reasonable fit for my team and I to try to handle. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, I'm sure we could do a whole show just around that. But from the time Kenna gets to the office to the time you leave, what are you doing? Like, what's the split? How often are you in the office? How often are you in meetings? What's emails looking like? Give us a lay of the land.
Oh man, I really enjoy what our work group gets to do because it's not assembly line work. Every day is different. It can be meetings, interviews, or it could be, I've got a crisis at the cemeteries. I'm working with my team on training ideas, doing public outreach. It runs the gamut. And then all of the culture change initiatives, whether it's planning our year in reviews, our managers retreats. We're working on annual reports, strategic plans, and then everything in between. It's really neat and versatile.
Okay. Okay. Cemeteries. You're about the third
Yes.
person I've had on the podcast that's, had something to do with cemeteries.
Yep.
What does the cemetery crisis look like? Like what, and then what's the kind of the normal daily, weekly beat of having a cemetery under your department?
Sure. We have 4, 2 of which are active, where we do have burials and interments, and the other 2 are just historical. There's nothing to do out there but maintain those records in perpetuity and groundskeeping. So at our active cemeteries, crises could be, we've got an issue with a burial, we've had a contractor who's broken a headstone or a concrete bumper. Hurricanes, we've had some really gnarly stuff post hurricanes that have happened. I think after Ian in 2022, I had 80 overturned and or broken headstones, and some of them, you think about, they're monsters and they're incredibly heavy, and Mother Nature had other plans, and they break and they splinter and they fall over, and you go, how is that possible? So I'm grateful that I have a team member who loves getting into the weeds and getting into the historical stuff and handling all that on my behalf. And with some of the issues and the age of the cemeteries, a lot of challenges come with that. So we have records or lack thereof. Previous staff have made promises to people in the community. Yep, you can have that space where you do that. And then a family member comes out of the woodwork and goes, well, who told you you could put so-and-so in that space? And you're like, I don't know. So
yeah.
we like to lean into our attorney to offer that advice, and for them, that gives us a bit more latitude to turn around and say, hey, listen, I know somebody may have said that to you. However, this is the legal advice. You're going to have to go through probate and all that good stuff, which typically elicits some unhappy responses. And we understand that it costs a lot of money and it's lengthy. So with some of those challenges, I made it a priority to make sure we're providing the best experience we can for our residents and the people out there visiting. Because when you've got a family grieving, the last thing they want to do is deal with our nonsense behind the scenes. So we've really made a lot of improvements to out with wayfinding signs, a new message board. We've done drone footage so people can see on the website, hey, this is what this area looks like. That's really neat.
Nice.
We've got a one-pager. That's for our residents and our funeral homes that we work with, because we want to educate them. We're a nonprofit cemetery, so we're not in the business to make money. We're only the intermediary between the funeral home and the family themselves. So we don't do burials. We don't do headstone installations. We're just the keeper of the records, if that makes sense. So that effort was important, because funeral homes were getting confused on what we do and our purpose. And really, we're just there to maintain records in the grounds. So I've had some challenging stuff out there, but because of some of those mechanisms we've put in place, we've definitely seen a decrease in some of those moments.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
It is interesting. I never thought in my entire life I'd ever oversee cemeteries, but the longer I'm here, the more I like them and the better I want to do right by them.
That's cool. Cool. Charlotte County, you spoke of it being a coastal city, town, or coastal county. Does that lend to any of the headaches, or does that change it up a little bit compared to being an inland city? And then also talk hurricanes. You said there might be some hurricanes, and there were some in the near past here. Did those affect you guys at all? And not necessarily regarding cemeteries, but just overall.
Absolutely. We're so close to sea level, and then proximity to the Gulf and all of our waterways, that always presents a certain set of challenges during rainy season and hurricane season. So we'll get a lot of calls, and the rainy season is coming up probably in the next 4 or 5 weeks. And then hurricane season starts 1 June. So we get a lot of calls from residents who came from up north, and there's water in my swale. Why is there water on the road? Because that is the way that our drainage system is set up to work. And that way the water can percolate and flow the way that it's supposed to. And that we get well, that's not how it is in you name it, Michigan, Ohio, wherever. So it's a constant education cycle. And now we've got a new public relations manager on board. So really trying to find some creative ways on outreach and education as best we can. And as far as hurricanes are concerned, good golly, Miss Molly. Last year, we had Hurricane Helene and Milton that were about 7 days apart. And that was challenging. And with Helene that hit first, we have never had a storm that produced so much sand being displaced on the beaches.
Sand.
I'm talking
Where does the sand come
hundreds
from?
of thousands of cubic yards of sand that got pushed out into the roads. I've never seen anything like it. And our team was charged with putting a sand recipient site together. And if I remember correctly, there was a dump truck every 35 seconds coming in and putting a load of sand on this pile because we had to get it out from the houses, the roads, underneath the condominiums. It was amazing, actually, the way everybody came together and figured that out. So again, no storm looks the same.
Yeah. I've never heard of the sand issues that people have with
Never.
storms. Yeah.
Never.
Interesting.
So we're hopeful we have a quiet season. We'll see.
You're the business services manager. You kind of gave us a top-down approach of what that is and what that does. I'm always intrigued by the red phone concept. The people internally that Kenna's always on the phone with. Like you said, there might be a new public information officer. You might be on the phone with them a lot. But who's kind of like Kenna's go-to internally to get things done or help you solve problems that you might have?
I always lean into my team as best I can, but when it's not them or I'm trying to figure out a solution, it's either my work bestie, Carly, who's the maintenance and operations manager, or my boss, who's the director. He's been with the county, I want to say 36 years. I've heard this story a lot. And he made his way up from a maintenance worker all the way through the ranks, and now he's the director. So there's a wealth and a breadth of knowledge I don't think I could get from anybody else. So we're constantly working through things, troubleshooting, and I appreciate both of their perspectives, both in this profession and then dealing with everything in between.
Gotcha. Every superhero has their backstory. There's always the lore on, why Superman became who he is and Batman and Spider-Man. But we want to know how Kenna became who she was. So first, give us your career path from high school all the way up until today. And then also what attracted you to the industry?
Oh boy. I will say I am not the same person I was when I graduated high school.
Is that a good thing, or
it is a good thing?
Okay.
I was just having a good time, and I remember the day I made a very big decision in my life. I was coming home from an errand, and I got pulled over for a speeding ticket, and I don't know what it was. And I said internally to myself, I need to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. And I'm a very list-oriented person. So I wrote out a list of pros and cons, and I wanted to join the military. Yeah. And I wrote it out, and my boyfriend, now husband, I sat him down and I said, hey, here's what I'm thinking. And he goes, I'll support you. I'll follow you wherever you go. And I joined the Air Force in 2004. And I ended up fulfilling my 4-year enlistment, but I didn't want to completely cut ties with the military because I'm from a military family. I'm talking just about everybody. And I said, man, I don't want to cut ties with the military. So let me see what I can do here. And I went across the street and I talked to the Air Force Reserve recruiter. And she said, yeah, I can get you in down in Florida if that's where you want to be. So I had a 1-day break in service, and then I was in the Air Force Reserve. So left active duty, moved down to Florida. Both of our parents had since retired. My dad from the Marine Corps, my father-in-law from the Pentagon. So we needed a support system because we're kind of starting over again. And our son was still little at the time. So it takes a village for sure. So it's nice to have family around to help. So anyway, got into the reserve, and that commitment is 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year, and enrolled into college with my post 9/11 GI Bill. So I was getting an education, and that was also an income at the same time. And then once I finished school, I can't remember what year it was, but we were probably on the tail end of when the economy crashed after 2008. So it took a little bit to finally get my foot in the door somewhere. And I found a company right up the road, and it was great. It was a fun learning experience. I went from an admin assistant, and then I moved over into procurement, purchasing, planning, stuff like that. And I really liked it. And unfortunately, the company got bought out and they downsized, and they said, well, hey, we want to keep you on. And I was like, hey, that's nice. No, thank you. And in the meantime, I had been applying to local jobs, and Charlotte County was one of them. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea about local government. I'm telling you, it's insane how much I didn't know. So I remember went up to the 5th floor and I had the interview. I got a call the next day. Again, I don't remember what department it was. And I get a call the next day, and they said, yeah, we want to bring you on. I said, okay, fantastic. So gave my 2 weeks notice, and then got over there. And it was in administration. To me, the heart and soul of every local government. And it was so neat to be there and to be around an incredible group of people and professional. They're so smart, and their talent. I could fangirl all day about these people. It was amazing. But it also gave me an opportunity to meet with all the departments and have people know who I am and my work ethic. So from there, I got recruited into economic development, and I spent about 2.5 years there. And it was time for me to go, and a position in public works opened up, and it was the business services supervisor at the time. So my team was much smaller. My scope of work was a lot different back then. And over time, I've been given so much leeway and latitude to explore, go do, experiment, see what works, see what doesn't.
Love it.
Yeah. And have been since promoted twice, and my team has grown. My boss likes to call it, I'm empire building. And I said, you're darn right I am. So go ahead.
No, keep going. Go for it.
So in the meantime, I was fulfilling my reserve obligation, and I just retired last February with 20 years. So the first 4 were active duty. The remaining 16 were in the reserve down at Homestead Air Reserve Base and near Miami area. So one Friday a month, I was making that trip down there, working over the weekend, and then back at it Monday.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. Thank you for doing that and giving the detailed explanation of it. That pivotal point in life, I want to labor on that a little bit. They could be 18, they could be 25, they could be 45, but there's a lot of times in your life where we think we should be doing something better, doing something with our lives. You said you kind of weighed the pros and the cons. Give advice to those who might be at that point now, whether they're younger or longer in the tooth, that they can weigh the pros and cons and see if they're going down the right direction or not.
As far as joining the military?
Not necessarily the military, but just like you said, you got a speeding ticket. You're probably thinking, I'm not making the right decisions in life. How can I get my, my ship going in the straight direction?
Oh boy. Being introspective and having a really tough conversation with yourself is what I'm doing working, and really getting all of that tough stuff out on paper, because if you're comfortable, you're not growing. And I think we all know deep down in our mind's eye when we could be doing better or something different. We know we're not doing the right things for us. But I also understand whatever season you're at in your life is driving those decisions. And sometimes it's, well, I don't want to uproot my family, or I don't want to go back to school, and whatever it is, just pick a place to start. It's like when your house is messy and you don't know what to do,
Yeah.
just pick a place and just, and if I could, as far as the military is concerned, I'll tell anybody who will listen, just do it. It's a fantastic opportunity. Even if you don't make a career out of it, the benefits far outweigh the cons, whether that's in benefits, education, and if you do stay for retirement, potentially a retirement.
Yeah. Yeah. You spoke about empire building. I love that concept because it sounds more like you have autonomy within your position. You work for a government agency, but so to say, the handcuffs of bureaucracy don't seem to be handcuffing you. What do you say to those who want more autonomy, to want to be able to empire build within their position, how to be able to show that they are capable of building the right empire and getting that longer leash to be able to try more things, to fail in positive ways to where they
Right.
can have that autonomy?
Quickly establish that you are dependable and trustworthy. And I'm sure you've heard that 1,000 times, but it's true, because then you end up becoming the go-to person. And with that comes more work. We all know that. You're the guy, you're the girl. I don't look at it as I have to do these things. I look at it through, I get to do these things. So even when I'm overwhelmed, I know the importance, I know the why, I know how it fits into the organization and how it aligns with our board's strategic goals. And I impress that upon my team. So if you can do that as quickly as you can, if you've got good leadership around you, you should then be able to have some of that freedom, latitude, and autonomy. I would say I'm extremely lucky and fortunate to be where I'm at and have the boss that I do. I don't think I could have as much without him. And so
Totally.
to that end, I try to do the same thing for my team. Figure it out.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Skill sets. Let's say youngsters asking you questions. They're looking for advice. They say, Kenna, what is the main skill set they should pick up to be the best, the best business service manager that they are in their position, kind of like you are in your position?
Organizational skills, follow through, and flexibility. Because again, our work is not assembly line work. It's different day to day. So being able to be flexible, kind of that plug and play for whatever situation is at hand. I would say those are the top three.
Okay. All right. It's story time. I need a story from Kenna.
Okay.
When something went wrong under your watch, what you did to fix it, and then what lessons you learned from it to apply to your future career.
Okay. We touched on it a little bit earlier about the cemeteries, but there's a lot of learning lessons for me in that. And so a little peek behind the kimono here. I was still very new to the position, and the details are a little fuzzy, but you'll get the gist of the story. There was a family who had purchased 4 spaces years and years ago, well before I had come into the position. And they went to have a service, I believe on a Friday. And as they were preparing the space, there was an issue. And they brought the entire family out, flew them out. They had the loved one ready to be placed in their final resting place. And there was an issue and they had to tell everybody to leave. They had to put the family member back at the funeral home. And I get a call from the funeral home director like, hey, I just want to let you know what happened. I was physically sick over the weekend because I just can't imagine you've got a loved one and that sadness, let alone a mess like this on top of it. And although it wasn't my fault, it is my fault. Okay. So we made it right that Monday. We met the family out there. We did a 1-for-1 swap. We gave them all 4 new spaces, made it right, apologized. I mean, again, you can't erase that mistake. But you can do the absolute best you can. Everything went well for the next time around when they went to go put him in his resting place. And from then on out, it was, all right, we got to get this tight and make sure we don't ever run into that again or mitigate it as best we can. And like I mentioned earlier, we've got a lot of fail safes in place now to help that along.
Yeah. Gotcha. Thanks for sharing that. That.
That's a spicy one. I try not to remember because it makes me so sad.
Yeah.
It was an accidental screw up. There's nothing I could do about it, but make it.
And the reason why I asked that question is not to just, pick at the scab that, it make you remember it and rehash it again. But there's other people around the nation, they're listening to the show and they might have just made a boo-boo and they feel like they're going to be physically sick all weekend because of what they did wrong this week. And if they could listen to your story and see that you're still, alive and kicking and still having a good time, then they too will be able to get through it. So this too shall pass. For sure.
Absolutely. I've always been that way. If something's on my mind or I feel like I did something wrong, like I said, I can have a tough exterior, but I really truly do care. And things do bother me. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So how does Kenna continue to improve herself? What do you do for upskilling? How do you show up daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, better and better? What's your personal and professional development regimen like?
Gosh, I'm introspective by nature, so I'm always looking inward and making sure I'm doing the right thing for me, my team. I try to volunteer as best I can, and I'm typically in some sort of leadership program and trying to bring my team with me as well. And just sharpening those leadership skills. Currently, I'm in NACO High Performance Leadership, and it's a 4-month cohort. And I remember when we first started, I'm like, man, I've done so many of these things. What's this program going to teach me that the others I've been through haven't? And it has been phenomenal. It's very intense. It's a lot of work. I work on it on the weekends and after work to make sure I'm keeping up. But I've learned so much and tools and tricks how to kind of reset myself and maybe not get wrapped around the axle about things that I typically would. So, and then every year, I print out my team's goals, mine and my team's goals. And that way I see them, they're actually right here. And I see them every day. And that way that's a focus point for me to make sure I'm always checking in because everybody can write a goal list. But if you're not looking at it every day and checking in and making that conscious effort, they're not going to get done. So,
yeah. Good point. Let's talk workforce development. Let's talk, I like to focus on, everybody focuses on the aging infrastructure. I like to focus on the aging workforce in our industry.
Yep.
Those who have all the knowledge are leaving versus those who are coming into the industry. What have you seen? What have you done in regards to onboarding, training, workforce development that has been effective? And then also, what are some things that you've seen other cities do that you might want to try out in the future?
Great question. This is my passion. This is, I get so excited about this and culture change initiatives. So again, with the latitude I've been given, the training position was moved under me a couple of years ago. And with that, we took a look at, is what the position was initially intended for, is that meeting our business and departmental needs? And the answer was no. So we realigned the training program to really focus on the 360 versus the maintenance and operations and heavy equipment type of training. We really wanted to open that up for everybody. So my training guy, who's amazing, he's gone from 1,275 training hours to we hit 9,500 training hours in about a year and a half. And again, we don't train to train. It's very intentional training. We're consistently eliciting feedback. Did this work? What did you like? What didn't you like? Does this make sense? Because you could easily check a box or pull somebody out of the field to sit in the office all day and go, this was an absolute waste of time. Then we started thinking, well, what are we missing? Onboarding. Okay, well, where do we start? Well, let's just start. So I did some real light research and quickly saw the value and the benefit, and then had buy-in from the leadership group around me. So I sat down with my training guy and said, what do you think? And he said, absolutely, I love it. We created a PowerPoint. We give them our annual report, a printed copy of the org chart with their name that's highlighted so they know who they are, who their supervisor is, and where they fit into the organization. And then they get scheduled to come in, meet with the training folks, go through the PowerPoint, and then they actually are taken on a tour of all of our facilities, and they get to meet some of the staff, because I wanted to create a very similar experience for each person as best we can. So that warm handoff when they're done with HR and they come over here and they're like, hey, I'm new here. Hey, I'm Jeremiah. It's nice to meet you. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the team. And I think so far we've onboarded about 38 folks, and we've received nothing but great feedback. But
yes,
we also touch base every couple of months to go, what can we tweak? Does this need to be updated? What would you like to add? So that's been fantastic. You talked a little bit about workforce, generational workforce. Some of that, we've got 4 different cohorts of generations all working together, which is the most ever. I actually have some really good studies in literature that I found about actual local governments going through a study, going through this very same thing, and pulled some of those key points out. And it's interesting because the value set are all the same across all cohorts. The difference is the emphasis they place on within each generation. So learning how to communicate what's important, well, that could have been an email. Yes, but they like to have a meeting. So being able to be adaptable to the people around you, right? It's true.
That could have been you. I love that statement, but go ahead.
Yeah. Right. And we're all guilty of it, but somebody needs that. Somebody values that.
Yeah.
And then in a leadership role, being able to understand your people, how they want to be communicated to, but furthermore, not getting upset when the younger generation needs to know, well, why am I doing this? And why is this important? Whereas the older generation and people like me are, okay, I'll go ahead and do it. You don't have to tell me twice. And understand they're not being combative. They just need a little bit more than some of the other folks. And oof. I think you asked another question, and
you're sharing so much good. The whole onboarding thing, I feel like that is that 20% organization can do to improve, like, because I want to talk about culture in a little bit, just that culture 80% in the right direction. The little thing of making somebody feel valued when they get hired on in the
Mhm.
first 30, 60, 90 days, first year. Even if you put like on the first 2 days, you're going to get walked around the yard. Third day, you're going to get introduced to Joey, and Joey's going to take you to a lift station. The fourth day, when they can see an actual spreadsheet of what they're going to be doing, and they know that they're going to be like, they have a plan already, it helps them land so much better, whether it's a private company or a public utility or an agency. But I love how, like you even said, you look up every 2 weeks and tweak it. Like, is this working? Is this doing a good thing or doing a bad thing? Should we change it? Should we not change it? I just love that aspect about it. The generational thing. I like how you said you got to reach people where they're at. Not
Mhm.
everybody wants to know why. The younger generation, we kind of like to know why. And it's not like we're being combative. I have a 4-year-old. She asks why all
Why?
the
Yeah.
time. Yeah, all the time. And I had to catch myself because I say, stop asking why. Stop asking why not. But she's actually curious. She
Mhm.
wants to know. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe I should feed into that. But yeah, culture change. Culture is one of those words that it's kind of a buzzword thrown around,
Mhm.
but let's get Kenna's take on culture, what it actually means, like how you define it, your personal definition, and then also whether if you're heading your culture in the right direction or not.
Okay. I- Let me think about what I think about culture change, and I'll share some of the things that I've been able to do. As you know, in construction, it can be very old school. I don't need any of this. This is all hooey. It's baloney. You name it. I've heard it and I get it. But our director really does believe in it and wants to make those changes. And we could start with our asset management system. We had a very antiquated one, and now we've moved over to, we've got iPads, and we're trying to get out of, we've got file rooms with paperwork, whereas we could be doing this digitally. So starting there, for example, and then adding onto those layers of, okay, we need to get moved into the 21st century here, folks. So training, let's get together more often. We get so down and into the weeds with, I've got to work, I don't have time for this, but you have to make time for it. It is important. And I said, well, why don't we do a department-wide survey? So we do it every year, and call the baby ugly. Go ahead, it's anonymous, and tell us what we're doing wrong, because if we don't know, we can't try to address it. And the top 3 things we've seen year over year, this was our 5th year, was training, communication, and recognition. And I'm sure
Wow.
that's not relegated to just us. I'm sure it's everywhere. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So after we get those results, the leadership team, managers, supervisors, we all sit down and we go through it, and we're like, ooh, okay, I'm seeing a pattern here, and strategize what we can do. So from there, it's, let's do more recognition. So while we do have kudos, I understand those get devalued when you hand them out all the time. It's like, great, thanks a lot. But now
Yeah.
we have an employee of the month program, and that's very intentional, and you get recognized and all that feel good stuff. Then we started with a year in review, and that's an all hands meeting. We come together, we put a PowerPoint together, we do recognition in front of your peers, and then just to add a little icing on the cake, we do a raffle, and the funds we do, we donate to a local nonprofit. It's a great time. We feed them, get their bellies full. It's good stuff. It's a yay
Okay.
rah rah moment, right?
Yeah.
Then we try to do some smaller stuff. We do managers retreats for the leadership group. It's an opportunity for us to come together and commiserate a little bit and share challenges and successes. And then we started doing annual reports, which they're actually right behind me on my desk there. And we joke
Okay.
because they're about the size of a yearbook, and we chuckle like, hey, do you want to sign my yearbook? But it's important because when you actually see the final product, you look back throughout that year and you go, holy smokes, look how much this entire department did. And it runs the gamut of projects, highlights, awards, somebody gets a master's degree, all the feel good stuff, all the morale events we've done, all that gets encapsulated into that report. And it's just really neat. And we share it with administration. We put it on our website because we want to show the community, we are working hard for you. Things are getting done. And then a strategic plan, which is similar, but it's, again, we're sharing our goals with our residents to go, here's what each of us want to do. Here's how we're meeting. And if we're not, here's why. So we've definitely seen a shift in the right direction with some of these initiatives. And, I've touched on training already, and training's been amazing. And this program is growing even more and more. And I'm excited about things in the future. One of the things I'll share here is we've got an auto progression and career pathing program we're trying to launch. It's taken a little longer than we want. It's been about 1.5 years in planning, but we've been very intentional in these meetings because we're trying to poke holes in it as best we can and go, okay, well, what about this? And what about this? And sometimes I think we get in our own way, but we've got a good framework. But the intent behind it is to give people an opportunity to either progress to the next job class by hitting certain metrics. We've bundled certain things, whether it's training, safety, certifications, leadership skills. You hit those marks and then you get a bump in pay. Or if you choose not to progress, you can still do these things, but you can be the most proficient in your job class. And then you get more money along the way. And then we become more proficient as a department to serve our residents.
Sure.
So very, very excited about that. But again, I understand it's been long and painful. Staff keeps hearing about it and they're like, okay, well, when are we going to do it? Soon. Promise. We're almost there. We had a meeting this week actually to iron out some of those last details.
Yeah, I'm sure
So
I'm sure when it launches, it's going to be great. And a year from now, you'll be able to give speeches on it and tell the rest of the country how to execute on something like that.
I certainly hope so. With anything, there's always pushback.
Yeah.
You get the folks that don't want to, they think it's silly, there's no value. And then their peers around them are promoting around them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ouch. Ouch. All right, let's talk misconceptions. Let's say you're at a dinner party and somebody is asking you, so Kenna, what do you do? When you tell them what you do, which is a business services manager, what do you think they think you do? Like, what are some of the biggest misconceptions about your position?
I think people would say I just sit in an office all day. And I do, but it's so much more than that. There's so much going on, whether it's an actual issue, or I'm trying to grow my people, or my people have an issue I need to help walk them through, or really trying to work through some really big challenges department wide. So I promise I'm not just sitting in my office all day.
All good. Let's say Kenna is commissioned to put up a billboard, and this billboard is in the most trafficked area of Charlotte County. What ask of your community in regards to public works would you put on this billboard?
Do I get charged by the letter?
No, but you get a digital one if you need to be able to flip it in 1,
nice.
2, 3. Yeah.
Man, I would love to continue to learn about what we do and be our champions. We promise that the things we tell you, they're true, especially as it relates to our drainage and our infrastructure. It is different here. It is, like I talked about earlier, being so close to sea level, and it's okay to have water in the swale and water in the road. But just continue to be our advocates and learn. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. One thing you spoke about your husband, how he said that one-liners, and it stuck with me so far. Kenna, I'll support you wherever you go.
Yeah.
Just him knowing that if you're, him supporting you on your journey, to be able to increase the mental health and the mental fortitude of what you're going to be doing, he knew that'll be a benefit to your unit, to your marriage. What have you seen that's worked to be able to help support those in your department, in your organization, even in your surrounding county or your, coworker, or some of your friends in the industry? What have you seen mental health wise that can help support some of those operators, some of those supervisors who are out there on the day-to-day doing the beat?
Learn your people, learn those around you, because that to me is the first indicator of when something is off. I can't tell you how many times I've just talked to somebody in the hallway or just say, hey, you got a second? You're off today. Is everything okay? Is there something I can help you with? And they kind of look at you and go, oh, and I'll either get a, hey, thanks for asking. I promise I'm good, but I appreciate it. Or, wow, how did you know? That's all I needed. Thanks so much.
Yeah. We always ask, where's Jimmy? Instead of how's Jimmy? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you for that. Always like to leave a space on the show for you to thank mentors that you had along your journey. And then I want you to give a word of inspiration and motivation to your fellow business service managers across the country.
Mentors. Okay. I'm going to say, first and foremost, like a lot of people do, my family. Okay. I grew up with a Marine Corps father. Very entrenched in the military. My parents are very hardworking, kind, and disciplined. And then moving from there, I'm going to say my current boss, shout out to John, and my previous two bosses, each of them has given me something that I didn't know that I needed and really pushed me to get uncomfortable because they saw something in me that perhaps I didn't. Then I'm going to say my husband. He is probably one of the most hardworking people I've ever met, and I admire him and his perspective on life. He's a neat dude.
Okay. Neat dude. I like it. And then a word to inspiration and motivation to your industry counterparts.
Hang in there.
Okay. Hang in there.
Hang in there.
Like that.
I think everyone is probably in a spot where there's more work than you know what to do with. And I've been struggling with that myself, that why can I not catch up? Am I not managing my time appropriately? Am I not delegating? No, there's just that much work. So hang in there. And I mentioned this earlier, but I truly do mean it. You don't have to do these things. You get to do these things. And the more you say that and you change that mindset, things don't feel so much like a burden. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's a mindset shift for sure.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. All right, Kenna, let's say I'm coming to town. I'm coming to Charlotte County. And I text you ahead of time. I say, Kenna, where can I go to get the best burger in Charlotte County? Where are you going to send me?
Ooh, I might get some head shakes. I don't know. I like Burger Bar and Leroy's Southern Kitchen.
What cities are these in?
So this is in Punta Gorda.
Okay. Kitchen. All right. Well, Kenna, thank you for hopping on the podcast today. Thank you for sharing your wealth of information and knowledge with us today. To all the listeners out there, make sure you share this with somebody who you think needs to hear it. Kenna, any final words before we get out of here?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I hope everybody enjoyed, and hope I didn't ramble too much, but I really appreciated the opportunity. This was fun.
For sure. For sure. All right. Well, this has been the Public Works Podcast. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in.